All right, welcome to another episode of the Educators Podcast. I am Mr. Burden, and my guest today is an awesome leader in education. She has been over 20 years in the classroom, as well as a veteran coach of all kinds of sports, including volleyball, softball, basketball. She is the Dean of Students at Hobart High School, and full disclosure, she's also my cousin-in-law. I'm talking none other than Brandi Krolak. Hello, Brandi.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks for joining me today. This is going to be a lot of fun. It's weird doing it this way instead of hanging at the bar at the Krolak bar. You know.
Yes, exactly.
those famous 4th of July parties that.
Yes, 4th of July potatoes.
Yes, 4th of July potatoes. You gotta love them. But I really appreciate you joining me. You've been an educator for over 2 decades, and you've been an administrator and as dean of students, and which is great because you've seen the multiple perspectives in education. And I definitely wanted to chat with you. I'm real excited. I do want to ask, just to kind of for people to getting to know you, what was it about education that got you into it? Was it just something you stumbled on, or did you always wanted to be an educator, or how did that kind of come about?
Well, when this just sounds so silly, but it is true. When I was little and went to school and saw what a teacher did, I was like, I admired them so much. And I loved that. And I loved the feeling that I got when my teacher helped me, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. And I wanted to give that to other people. I always tried to equate it to like Christmas. I love giving presents to people, and I love to see the expression on their face. Yeah. Because I try to give those presents that are meaningful, not just, oh, cool, the latest, crap or gadget. I try to make it personal. And to me, that's what education felt like I was giving I was called a presence of knowledge, and so I wanted to hand out Christmas presents nonstop. And so to me, that's what teaching was to be able to give students a gift of knowledge, and that watching students' faces when they learn something or they realize that they could do something, that is what I wanted. But ever since I knew what a teacher was, I wanted to be a teacher myself, and I kind of never gave that dream or that idea up. And it was a part of me. It was more of I think a lot of times teachers, it's a calling than it is just a job.
Absolutely. There's something, it's a high when you have that moment, that yes moment, you get that kid that's been struggling to read, you get him right. You get him he does a paragraph, or you get him to above 500 Lexile or something. You get, it's cool. And you're definitely right about that calling. I mean, I do feel like a lot of teachers go, especially all the work we have to do to become educators, and all the continuous training. But it definitely, I think would you agree that there are some things that you can't learn as an educator, you can't be taught, other than on the job, where it has to be in here?
Yeah, I really do. I think that it's an instinct. Baseball is one of my favorite sports. And I think that when you look at like professional ball players or any kind of athlete, there's an instinct to it. Yeah. They call it, the court smarts or the ball smarts or whatever. You just know it. And you can see how some of these athletes have that instinct. And I think teachers is the same way. Like it's an inner thing. And I think that's when you talk to a lot of teachers that say that it feels more like a calling than anything. It's because there's that instinct. And just like with anything, through time and practice, you get better. You tune into those instincts a little bit better. You listen to that inner self, and you just know. And the one thing with our profession that I always try to like tell younger teachers is like, you keeping at it and knowing that that's what you're supposed to be doing is important, because sometimes you don't see the results of what you've done until later. Because I'm a secondary person. And so it takes a little while sometimes for students to come back or reach out and say, this is what you've done for me. Or, when I've had a student at a freshman or sophomore level, and then 5 years later, when they're in college, reach out and say, hey, I'm becoming a teacher because of you.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you're like, oh my gosh. That's happened several times before to me too. I even had a young man who as an adult, he works as an aide in a elementary school. And he had told me he wanted my email. He reached out to me at work and was like, I'm writing this article about education. Can you proofread it for me? And actually, it was a letter to me saying how much I inspired him, and his life wouldn't be the same if it weren't for me. And and he was in his late 20s by then, and I had him when he was a 15-year-old boy in high school. So it's kind of cool to see those types of things too. And those are kind of the things that you hold on to also when you're dealing with troubled students, when when you feel like you're at your wit's end and you just either give up or throw them out the window. And you're like, no, this, because you have to remember, and again, especially at my level with seeing these large people who are still children, and you have to remind yourself that, and that you are still molding, and sometimes you don't see it until later. And so that's kind of a thing that also keeps me going, is one day they're gonna make it.
One day
with my guidance, hopefully they'll do that. But it is great to see that, and that's what keeps me going.
That's tremendous, and that connection is so important. That's such a testament that they especially in your friend's position, that he remembered you at 28 years old. You're the one he thought of. That's you can take all the accolades, take Teacher of the Year awards, whatever. That's a Teacher of the Year award to me. That's a true reward, is when they come back and they come to see it. I think, and finding those connections too, because how important is it in the classroom to make those genuine connections with students, like how, and in order to help them trust you, in building trust.
I even when I was younger, when I start off my class, I used to say that trust is so important, because for them to see me as a person and me to know something about them, it creates a better relationship for them to open up, and to ask for help, and to develop that relationship. But it's all about relationships. Knowing that this is a person, not just a product. As some people say, some of our older teachers, they just want to go through the motion and give out the stuff and then move them on. You sit there and behave and you do your work, and then I give you a grade and you're gone. But we have to remember that we're in the business of people. We're not in the business of products. And so you have to remember that and reach out and get to know your student and to learn about them, learn about their likes, their dislikes, the things that maybe hinder them, or their strengths. And that's what it is that kind of guides you as a teacher, not only with your lesson, but how you approach them. And then I think that just opens up, like I said, a lot more with students being able to come to you. I've had students who I didn't even have in class, but by just talking to them in the hallway, or even now as a dean, they're not even my students per se, but they still want to come to me and talk to me because they feel more comfortable, or they feel closer to me because of other various interactions. Absolutely. Because think about it in any other relationship, like in a family. There's usually a family member that you feel closer to, that you're going to entrust with certain things. And then when something is personal like that, you have that connection. And for a student, they're going to remember things better. Because it's a personal connection. And that's what it's all about. And if they see it as, hey, she's really invested in me, that's pretty cool. And they're either going to learn my material, which I was an English teacher and most of them didn't like English, or they're going to learn something from me in regards to life. And I think that that's important as well. It's just as important as the material itself,
I'm speaking from a former fourth grade teacher. Trying to make Jamestown and Werowocomoco interesting to kids that want to go and play Fortnite or dance on TikTok, you really got to be.
And that's another thing. It's really difficult because again, you said this is my 26th year, and being in the classroom for over 20 years, I have seen how difficult with the TikToks and the social medias and things like that becoming more and more difficult in keeping their attention. Yes, we're teachers, but you're performers. You have to keep their interest. I used to tell them, I'm not there to entertain you. but you kind of are. Like, you
Yeah.
have to keep their interest. You can't just present your material. You have to try to remember, again, that these are children, no matter what age, kindergarten through 12, they're still children, and you have to try to keep their attention. And so that's super important as well, to be kind of like that entertainer, but with phones and this and that. Over the years, I've seen it is definitely more difficult because, yeah, the Crucible is not as exciting as, the latest TikTok or the Scarlet Letter.
Yeah.
Like, that time period is, oh my gosh. Or like Moby Dick. I hated that book, and I used to tell them, like, I don't like this book, but we still have to do it, and I used to always give my opinions on that stuff too, because they have to realize, I used to tell them, you don't have to like everything, but I want you to have an appreciation for it. And there's a difference. And so I would give my honest opinion, like, I can't stand this book, but we need to read it because this is why it's important. And so for them to understand or see that, oh my gosh, you as a teacher don't like stuff. Yeah, that happens. Or I used to always tell my kids, I failed algebra in high school. I failed a class.
What?
I'm not a wizard. I'm not like, the be all end all. But I still, I had to take it again, and I got A's and B's in it. I made sure I had a tutor. Like, I always want them to know that things are possible. Like, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to fail. What's not okay is you just to give up, or to you just say, okay, that's fine, or whatever. But to get back up there and to do it. And again, to find an appreciation for everything, for knowledge, for learning, for putting your all into something. That's what's important.
I think that's really cool too. The way you put it is, there's a difference between liking or not liking something and appreciating it. Like, there were times where, like, I'm teaching something and I'm real with the kids. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get this is a tough one, but this is why we need to learn this. And I think that humanizes you. And it really because kids can sense, for regardless of age, kids can sense BS. They can sense when the teacher's got that lobotomized smile, like, okay, kiddos, we're going to do this. And they're like, come on now. But when you're like, all right, here's the deal.
Yeah.
Jamestown, or Crucible, this is why we're going to read it. Yeah, it's tough. But we're going to break it down, and we're going to get there. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier too that some of the veteran older teachers where they kind of are going through the motions, and sadly I've seen that happen a lot, where teachers that may have had that fire, it starts to go out. What have you noticed that, and what do you think is kind of driving that, or is there multiple reasons affecting why there seems to be a lot of teachers kind of starting to, do they feel overwhelmed, do you think, or what do you think's going on with that?
I think it's a combination of a multitude of things. It's the the rigor of, from your state or district or whatever, of having to do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and then from your own school corporation, and the amount of years that they've actually put in, and then combine that with, like I said before, all of this technology and how you're trying to beat yourself up just to get them to pay attention. And I for example, this gentleman who is retiring this year from school, and he's a great math teacher, and he could have kept going for a couple of years, but it's just taken a toll on him, where it's too much time that he is putting forth, and he feels like he's not getting anything in return from the students. And it's just, it seems like it's a combination of so many different things. And I feel like it's the burnout. But on the other side of that, I feel like he spent, and this is going to sound terrible, too much time, where he's not taking time for himself.
Work-life balance.
Yes. And there, when I worked a couple years ago at a different high school, I would get there super early. I always used all of my plan time. I would stay a little bit later after school to make sure that I always got everything done, because I didn't bring things home. When I came home, I was a mom. I was a family person. I took time for myself. I worked super hard before school, during school, and after school. But when I came home, that was it. And it was just nonstop, and he would take it home not till 2:00 in the morning.
Ooh.
And I think that burnout, is what really kind of ignites everything, because then if you have that burnout, then the district stuff, then the school stuff, then all of this other stuff becomes way too much for them to then kind of handle. And that's what, last year when I was mentoring a young teacher, I made sure I was like, you have got to take time for yourself. Yes, you work hard, but you got to prioritize, because you can't do your job if you yourself aren't being taken care of. And I think that that's an important aspect of education that I wish people would understand. But and I don't know why this is on my mind, but having more young people go into education, we're not seeing that. And I feel like because of some of this burnout, or like kids with their attitudes, and it's like kids have had attitudes forever. Like I mean, they're just different, and being able to deal with that. But it's also like it's not a glamorous job. It's not, again, something that you make a ton of money in, and it's not like being an influencer where everybody loves you and stuff like that. And but it's real, and it's so satisfying, and people are missing out on such a wonderful opportunity to have something that is so fulfilling. To look at somebody who doesn't seem to be satisfied in a job where all they did was just, again, produce a product. It was like, what did you get out of that? And so many people that I know now that I'm getting older who are retiring from jobs like that, there is no satisfaction. They're just glad to be done. And it's like, well, what did you learn from that? What did you gain from that? What can you take that and like give to your grandkids? Or nothing, absolutely nothing. Whereas in the job that we have, when I retire, I'll be able to hand off so much like joy and knowledge and experience to not only my daughter who's going into education,
Oh, wow.
but then hopefully, my grandchildren someday. She is second year Purdue Lafayette elementary ed. And
very cool.
She just loves it, and it's an honor that she says that I'm one of her role models, and that she aspires to be like me. But that's because, and I feel, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back.
No, go on.
Even though I am, I think that
we gotta change your name to Miss Fabulous here instead of Brandi.
I could do that.
Yeah,
I don't mind. I think it sounds good. But I think because she was able, I made it real, and I also talked about it, and she could see like a lot of the joys, and when I would have like a bad day, I wouldn't let that ruin everything. It's a bad moment. I mean, every job, and I used to tell her, every job has bad moments, but the overall, it's the, I loved going to work. I loved going to coach. I loved doing all of that. And it was not only a challenge for me, but it was fulfilling. And I think that she sees that. And once she started working with students, she got to experience it. And so now she wants to continue with that, which is awesome.
She got the high. She got the moment. And now she craves it. That's
she
awesome.
did. Yeah.
I know in our districts are very different. You're in Indiana, I'm in Virginia. And I feel like in our district, a lot more is being put on teachers, and teachers are now becoming almost like the default solution in every case, whether it's behavior this or we're short on staff, so we'll just make the teachers do it, and it seems to be adding to that already teacher burnout that we're talking about. And that was one of the hardest lessons I had to really make myself do, is make time for myself, because if you're not, as a teacher, if you're not performing at your peak, the kids are going to suffer too. The kids will know, and then they'll probably, but also like it's a disservice to the students if you're not taking care of yourself.
Sure. And I think that it's one of the reasons why I also wanted to be in the position that I am now in administration, because I wanted to not only continue to work with students, but I wanted to work with other teachers.
Yes.
Because they need support from their administrators, and where I am, we have 3 deans and then 2 co-principals. And my superintendent had told me when I got the job, she's like, you're responsible for the climate and the culture of the school, like the atmosphere, how it feels. And I need everybody to feel comfortable and welcome and safe. And that includes the teachers, and like the principals, they do the best that they can, but they're, I feel like they're dealing with so much. It's like, I try to take on and help those teachers. I try to make them feel heard and supported. And just a little note or a little sit down time makes a world of difference. Whereas you feel if you're just out there in the wilderness by yourself, you feel like you're going to be gobbled up anytime.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, like I write little notes to teachers. I have a checklist of my entire staff, and every couple of weeks I try to do like 5 to 7 different notes. And I have had teachers almost in tears come to me and be like, "You just made my day, my week. I feel better. I can do this." And it's like, I just wrote you a note that was this big, but I know that those were things that helped me. Like when
Yeah.
I was having a bad moment and a teacher came and just spent, my department chair would come and spend some time with me, then I felt better. Or when I got a note from a principal one time, I was like, thank you for noticing that I have those qualities. And I forgot about that until you mentioned it. So I
I am
think
a
that,
badass. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am pretty cool. And so I think that that's important too, that teachers are getting that support from administrators, and
Mhm.
administrators need to remember, because most administrators were teachers before, what is it that you needed to be successful? And of course, we all have jobs that we have to, answer to the big guy or whatever, but we also have to make time for them. And that's why I like the job that I'm in now, because I give that support to students, but I'm also able to give it to so many more teachers than just like my department. I have been able to reach out to so many more, and it's been really cool to help them in any way that I can.
I love this because you're already answering my next question for you. It was, but it that whole thing about being genuine to the students to get a genuine response, to get the most out of them, it translates to teachers too. Teachers need
Mhm.
that, and it
Mhm.
sounds like that's kind of, what makes you great at what you're doing now is you've been able to translate that. And I think sometimes that gets forgotten in some cases where, yeah, the teachers need, not the teachers need just motivate, not like from the standpoint of, oh, that we're gonna just let the teachers take Monday through Friday off kind of thing, but like teachers need to know that they're valued. They know that they're
Yes.
supported. I
Yeah.
I remember my master's thesis, I went in on teacher retention, and I originally was going in pay teachers more. Now, we could talk about teacher compensation, but what was interesting was that was a lot of times third or fourth on the
Mhm.
top reasons why teachers are leaving. Safety and feeling supported were in one and two, and they weren't
Mm.
always, they flip flop, like depending on every surveys that I did. But I feel like you feeling safe and feeling supported or the lack of support is why teachers would leave. Or feeling supported, you want to stay longer. You get
Yeah.
more out of that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And if you're talking about pay, let's say, someone who feels supported and maybe is not making as much as they think they can,
Mhm.
to them they'll be like, it's okay because I can pay my bills, I could do this,
Yeah.
but I feel supported, I feel safe. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to stay. And I can tell you that I've worked in different districts, and I've been all over, like the pay scale. But it's the places that I felt supported, that it didn't matter what I was making,
Yeah.
because I felt like when you're supported, you feel more like at home. And it goes back to relationships, not only relationships with you and your students, but it's a relationship with everybody in the school community.
Hmm.
And, I am so lucky to be where I'm at in my district. Everybody says we are a huge family, and we're the brickies. And the motto is once a brickie, always a brickie. And every school in our district, they're all brickies. Where I've seen other schools where it's like, one of the schools that I used to work at, the high school they were the Indians, and then one of the middle schools, they were the wolves, and another one was the coyote. Like they're all different. Whereas at
Hmm.
our school, every elementary, they're little brickies.
Little
The middle
bricky.
school, the middle school, they're the brickies. The high school, we're the brickies. My superintendent knows everybody's name. She knows all the kids. She's involved in everything. And we're a family, and we look out for each other. We fill in for each other. We support each other, and you do really feel like a family and you feel supported. So,
Yeah.
yes, obviously money is important because people have to survive. It's not the kind of job where you're just looking to, cut throat and get ahead. it's like I said, it's a calling. And so if you have that calling, it's a feeling and it's an atmosphere. And that's why, as someone who's in charge of atmosphere, it's important to be supportive of everybody, involved. Everybody from the custodians to the principal and the superintendent, all the way down to the students. Everybody who works or is involved in that school is important, and we all have to work together. Nobody's working against anybody. And then that's where parents come in. We've got some parents, and in every school you do, who are always wanting to fight against the teacher, the school corporation, and those that are very supportive. And obviously, it's our job to be like, look, we're supportive. We want to do what's best for your students, for the school, for everything. But when we work together and have those great relationships, great things happen. I mean, look at, there was I've seen it before, like meme or whatever on Facebook a lot. And it was plants grow better when you talk to them in a nice way. They've done, imagine what you could do to people if you talk to them that way and treated them that way. So think of it that way. Like if you could talk to your plants and they grow really nice because you're nice to them, imagine what you could do with people if you were that way.
Big time. And it goes back to that trust and being genuine. Like I remember I've had a spectrum of administrators that I've worked for, and I've had administrators that I would charge into battle for because I had that trust with her, and like when she would write a note, it was a genuine note. It's always that thing. I always felt like a good administrator, is supportive, and when they come into your room, it's not, oh no, it's all right.
Or like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, hey, how's it going? What's going on? And then I've had the opposite where I'll get a note and it says, you're amazing at whatever it is you do. I mean, that's not exactly what's said, but it's such a dismissive thing. It's clearly they're going, I'm a check on a piece of paper, and there's no trust there. And that I think can do a lot more damage. Just like when if someone is fake to a student, the students know, and you lose that trust. And I think that's just so important. And that's really cool that when you talk about family, because that's something you can't fake. And you can sense it. And I think parents can even sense it when they come into a building. Most people, when you walk into a building and you feel that sense of family, you feel that support when you walk in. It's weird, but you can almost tell when you walk into a building which ones are truly a good community of support and which ones are kind of hostile.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was just talking to a teacher today. I said, this place is one of the only places that I've ever walked into that I don't feel a grudge or feel weird or feel icky coming into the building. I just feel like I'm walking into my house. Like it's a comfortable feeling, and in saying that, yes, I'm lucky that I work at a place like that, but there are a lot of districts like that. Yeah. And I want other teachers to know that those things are out there. Like so many districts get a bad rap because maybe it's their leadership or just that they're having a bad moment, or it could be something within the state legislature that has come up that is causing these issues. But that doesn't mean that it's always going to be like that. And you can turn those things around. And it's again, it's what you make it. And to not just abandon teaching, where you hear so many young teachers within the first 5 years, they leave. And it's like, we got to make sure that they feel supported and they know that this is possible. And I mean, I just have a blast most of the time at work. I love it,
What now, I don't want to make it sound like you crossed any kind of picket line, but going from being a teacher to administrator didn't sound like it was much of a transition, because it sounds like you're just being you anyway. Again, you're just now also involved with the teachers. But what are some things you've noticed, and what are some misconceptions that some folks may have about the administration side of things that maybe teachers don't fully appreciate? Or flip side, what are some opportunities you think that administrators need to do a better job with?
Well, I think one of the big misconceptions is the you versus, like, us versus them kind of a thing, and I'm like, that's crazy. Because as administrators, we're always, at least our team, we're always talking about what can we do to help them? What can we do to support them? You know, and like our teachers to us are number one, because, you know, without your teachers, you don't have anything. I mean, that was one of the things that when I was little, I thought was amazing. Teachers make everything possible. You know, we have these engineers and these scientists. Somebody taught those kids.
Yep.
Somebody taught those university students. They didn't just wake up one day and poof, there they were, you know, this amazing brainiac. And so it's we're on the same team. And I think, again, it just goes back to the idea of relationships and an interaction of a family. I always look at like our admin team, again, our co-principals, there's a woman and a man, and I call them mom and dad. And so, and then I call our superintendent. She's like, I call her Big Mama, because she's like her grandma. She like takes care of everybody and like is the leader of the family. But that's what it's like. It's like, okay, they're the ones that are guiding us, but we're all in the same family.
Yeah.
We don't look at it as a separation. It's just a different job. And all of us that are in administration, we have been in the classroom. And so we want to continue that relationship so that we never forget what it's like to be in that classroom. And we need to be in the classroom with those teachers, be in the hallways, interact with those students and teachers so that we know what's going on and that we can understand and that we can help them. But I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. We are no longer like, you know, this entity that's out to get them or to see what they're doing wrong or to catch them in doing something wrong. Not at all. Not at all. And you know, and if a place is like that, shame on them, because that's not what an administrator should do. Like, oh, I'm going to catch you I'll mark you wrong on this eval or whatever. It's like, wait, what? Why would you do that to somebody? And I think that's one thing that's a huge thing that's totally not cool.
Not cool at all.
No.
I think that does happen in other in more toxic districts and toxic locations. It sounds like Hobart's doing the deal. You know, the Brickies sound like they're definitely a place to go. Have you ever had a moment or in your teaching at other schools prior to Hobart, where you felt a little more, you didn't feel as supported, or you didn't feel that family? You mentioned that when you walk into Hobart, you feel like you're home. And you don't have to say specifics, but like, have you ever felt not supported at school? And on that, did that kind of stick in your head as, hey, I'm going to make sure when I'm an administrator, I'm not going to be like this?
Very much so. One of the last places that I was at, I wasn't there very long because mainly of that. I was like, I get no support from here. You know, I started out liking what I did. I was an athletic director and helped out with the administration there. And there was not a lot of support. And I'm like, this is not at all the feel that I want. And it was a drudging feel to be there, and I didn't like it. And in a previous school, it was a combination because I had been there for 13 years. And so I went through a couple of different administrators. And at first it was, because of the leader, a very family oriented kind of feel amongst the staff. And she was a phenomenal leader, but then that kind of, it changed once she was gone. And it never really felt the same. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I ended up leaving there, because it was like, I don't feel supported. I feel like a sheep that I'm just, you know, they're going to lead me to a field, do what you got to do. And then, you know, that was kind of
take your wool.
Yeah. Right. And it was like, I don't like this. I don't want this. And, so I feel like I've been on the sides of all of it, and it's an icky feeling, and I can understand why people. Yeah, I know that. I don't know if that's a very educated word to use.
No, I think that fits. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it is an icky feeling, and I don't like feeling like that. And again, teaching is not a job. It is a way of life. And so if that's your way of life and you're calling, why would you want to feel like that?
Yeah.
So I guess I just needed to find my home. And I think that now that I'm in the position to maintain that home, I want to make sure that we keep as many people, and I want them to feel as home as well.
And you're going to fight for that too.
Absolutely. You know, and if I see something that I think is wrong or whatever, I want to be able to speak up and be like, this isn't right. Like our teachers need this, or our students should be doing this, or we need to make sure that they have like whatever it is, because you got to keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open and your ears open, and see what your family needs, and get them what they need and what they want.
How important is that open communication with the teachers? Like, and I've seen some toxic districts and toxic locations where when the teacher that speaks up gets targeted and the other teachers are afraid. It becomes kind of the prisoner's dilemma. Nobody wants to speak up about something because they don't want to get targeted. But again, that comes back to the administration. It sets the climate, and if you have that open communication, it's a lot different. And how have you noticed that in your various locations?
Well, I think that that's one thing that is again a misconception with people, but if they've experienced it in other districts or where they've been, that's something that is very real. And I think it's, again, in relationships, the way that you deal with people, letting them know, not only saying it but showing it. Example, like with my students, even as their dean, I can be mad at you for what you did. I'm not mad at you per se as a person. I don't like what you did. And as a dean, I have to discipline you for it. But guess what? Tomorrow when I see you, I'll be like, hey, how's it going? Well, wait, aren't you mad at me? No. Why? What'd you do? Well, yesterday I took that apple and threw it at that kid's head. Okay, well, that was yesterday. You learned from it, right? Let's move on. Like it's okay. Like, and then we talk, why did you do that? If there's that open communication with a student, it should also be that way with a teacher. And teachers are, I think, still afraid sometimes to say something because they're afraid to be targeted, but they have to, again, have that feeling of, I feel seen, I feel safe, I feel valued, and then they're not going to be afraid to speak up and come forward and say something, because again, it's not a us versus them. It's all of us. It's a family. Hey, we need a family meeting. Let's go.
All right,
What's
family
going on?
meeting.
What do you need? What do you need to talk about? What do you need to bring up? And just to sometimes to understand, you just need to listen.
Yes.
And sometimes people just want to be heard. And I'm a talker. I love to talk. I don't know if you could tell.
No.
But, and that's one thing that I try to remember for myself is when a teacher comes to see me, sometimes they don't necessarily want a solution. They just want to be heard. So it's like, shut up and let them talk. And so if they feel like that, like they feel like they can come and talk, then they feel comfortable. But then again, it's relationships, and it's not something that happens overnight. It's got to be something that you're willing to work on.
Yes, absolutely. That's tremendous too, and it helps.
It's worth it.
It is. And just it really sounds like where you're at is an, I don't want to say ideal, but it's what I think a lot of locations, a lot of educational institutions should strive for. Because I think it's the benefits of having a working environment where you feel, like you said, you don't have that icky feeling. You walk in, you feel at home, you feel like, yes, you like. And I think my best years in teaching were those years when I would be excited to get out of bed because I knew we're going to do this today. And we get to have this. Oh, I'm going to tell this joke to this kid and he's going to laugh. Oh, this kid, I know he watched the Iron Man movie. We're going to talk about, all those things. Yeah. And you're, I'm driving to work and I'm thinking about all these cool things we're going to do today. And when that goes away, it's like that icky feeling comes and you don't want to go there. And I feel like if that's what we focus on, creating that environment, it's contagious because the kids feel it. They go home, they're excited to come back to school. Yeah. They're the ones, and then the parents see this, and I think that even helps. And I feel like it's kind of on us as an education team, which is everybody, family, if you will, to help parents understand kind of that, hey, we are here to support, we're here to help. We're not necessarily here to raise your kid for you.
Right.
But we are here to provide that support. In your experience, what do you think are some some misconceptions that parents that are not familiar with education may have with teachers, with teaching, and it's not everybody, but like are there some misconceptions that you feel like you wish you could just wave a magic wand and dispel?
Well, and it's hard because, parents, they're sweet children. I get
Yes.
it. They love them, and to them, they are the only child. But
Hmm.
parents have to remember that, whether it's a third grade class or a senior comp class, there's at least 30 to 35 kids in that classroom.
Wow.
And, your kid is not the only kid. And I think parents have that idea of like, you need to focus on my kid and my kid only. You have to
Hmm.
be this like miracle worker. And it's like, okay, well, but they're not the only student. And so it's like you're trying to juggle 30 kids, or even if it's 25 kids in a smaller class. I almost want to say to parents, you're a parent, and I know there are some families that can be large. Maybe they have 6, 7 kids.
Yep.
Imagine if you had 25 children every day.
Yeah.
How in your home? How do you think that that's going to work? How do you think that, your kids, your 25 kids are going to fare every day? And I don't think parents see that. They only see like you're dealing with my child and my child is perfect. We all think our children are beautiful and perfect and wonderful, right? And that they don't
My
lie and they
angel.
never do anything. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know some parents aren't like that, but I mean, as a parent, you want to see the best in your kid. You want
Yeah.
them to get the best and you want to, to see them thrive, but it is very difficult. And just like with teachers having to be patient, parents have to be patient too.
Hmm.
Teaching a child is not, one day and then they're masterful. It's when they have a teacher, it's a year-long process, and that process is not over. I mean, they're not done until they graduate from high school.
Yeah.
So it is a year-to-year thing that you have to be patient with and work with that teacher. I mean, like if you were sick, you would work with your physicians, your nurses, your therapy, if you had to do physical therapy, you
Hmm.
work with them. You don't just expect if you break your leg, come fix this right now, it's
Yeah.
done. It's not how it works. You gotta cast it, do surgery, then physical therapy. I mean, it's a process, and so is education. And so parents just need to realize that teachers are very passionate, are there for all the right reasons, but they're human too, and there's only one of them. And they do have your child's best interest at hand, otherwise they wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes parents misconstrue like a teacher being angry or upset at a student. They're not angry or upset at the student. Again, it's what maybe they're not doing, because this
Hmm.
teacher's putting so much effort or so much into that child, and they're not seeing either the behavior that they want to or the progress that they want to, and they're frustrated at that. They're not frustrated at your kid, they're not mad at you, they're frustrated and kind of at what's end, what can I do to fix this? And I just wish parents would be a little bit more patient with
Yeah.
teachers,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
I love that analogy. It's like you can't just go to the hospital with a broken leg and walk out with it fixed.
Yeah.
It's the same
Ta-da!
thing. Yeah, it's the same thing with a kid. And some of the most frustrating things too is when you work really hard with a kid and you get them, whether it's a behavior thing or whether it's a academic thing, and then they go away for the weekend and they come back and it's like it's all undone. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
it's
or with students who have different homes, because
yeah,
a lot of our students, it's very common now that you don't have two parent households. It's kids are split between
yeah.
four parents now. And right off the bat, I can think of, we have a student that's having an attendance issue, and unfortunately, when she's with mom, she can talk mom into, I'm not going to school.
Hmm.
But when she stays with dad, she never has an attendance issue. She's always in school, and
Hmm.
that's something that's really difficult too, where you're again trying to work with that student and that family, but it's like, what do you do? Because they're split, and it's like, okay, dad's doing what he needs to do, but mom's not doing what she needs to do. And that's really difficult. And you have to remember that you got to work with those parents, but it's the child that you should be focusing on.
Yeah.
And that makes it really difficult when you've got those types of things.
Yeah, you got to do the best you can while they're in
Yeah.
front of you, and it's
Yeah.
it's sad sometimes. There's things out of your control.
Yeah.
How have you noticed? Has there been a change, a drastic change, or an evolution of student behavior since you started teaching? And now you've pretty much been at the high school level though, right?
Yes, I started off my career in middle school. I taught middle school for 3 years, and then went to high school.
Are you noticing a difference in student behavior and how student behavior is managed, or has it improved, or is it maybe specifically at your school because of that family environment? Is it better in your opinion?
I don't know if it's so much better as it's just different. And when, teachers are like, oh, students are so much worse nowadays. I don't know if it's so, because you'll hear teachers from the 50s say that too. I just think that it's different, the things that they deal with. I have seen a difference in communication because of social media devices.
Yeah.
Students speaking face to face with another person is very difficult. I feel like students don't know how to communicate, so therefore they don't know how to defend themselves. And if someone gives a comment, or even if it's constructive criticism, oh, you're picking on me, you're mean, you're evil, you're terrible, and they don't know how to deal with that. And I think it's leading to more heightened anxiety and social anxiety kind of issues because of that. But I think that has a lot to do with how, they were raised. They're iPad babies. I mean, when I was doing a couple years back, when I was doing my internship for my licensure for being a principal, I was at an elementary school, and this little girl needed to come in and use the phone to call her mom. She was in first grade. She looked at the phone. You had to pick it up and dial. Yeah. And she didn't know what to do. And we were like, oh my gosh. Well, if you think of a cell phone, you push its touch screen.
Yeah.
She had never seen, or they didn't have a home phone. So we had to tell her, like, you pick this up and put it to your ear, and then you push the buttons. Like, she had no idea.
God forbid if it was a rotary phone.
I know. Right? And you messed it up and you have to start all over. That was annoying. Oh my God. Or you looked at the number and you're like, oh my God, there's a 9 in it. Oh goodness. It'd take forever. But I mean, like things like that. Because they'll text each other and they're very articulate in that way. But get in front of them and speak to them, and they don't look you in the eye. Mm-hmm. They don't know what to say. And I think that that's a detriment to them. But then because they're so vocal over social media stuff, they feel like they have a right to say whatever they want whenever they want. Yeah. And that I think is just a different issue. And so teachers see that as a huge behavioral problem. Whereas again, I think we just need to remember how they've grown up with all this social media. And it's just different. It's just different problems.
I like how you put it too, iPad babies. They are iPad babies. I don't know if that's going to be their defining generation, but it's kind of that. And the kids that are now in 3rd grade were in kindergarten when COVID
hit. Babies. Mm-hmm.
So the COVID babies. So and I noticed particularly this past couple of years, a lot of kids are, and I don't know how much of it's COVID or how much of it's just the change in times, but the kids seem to be a lot more at the elementary level, a lot more needy, or a lot less able. They lack a lot of coping mechanisms or coping skills.
Yeah, very much so. But because I mean, if you think about, a lot of them were by themselves.
Yeah.
With a parent or like one other sibling. And so when they needed something, their needs were met immediately.
Yep. They weren't
competing. And now they're not competing with 25 other people. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, not only are they needy, but they don't know how to cope. Wait, you're not meeting my needs right now? I don't know what to do because this has never happened to me before. And so, yeah, that and then you've got 25 of them that are like that. It's chaos, and it's difficult. It's going to be hard for them, as a teacher, to not only teach them material, but also to teach them how to cope with themselves and their own emotions, and to cope with other people and their emotions as well. And so I feel like teachers, because of COVID, and the younger ones especially, it's very difficult. At the high school level, the last couple of years, we saw how, these kids, like the last time we would every year, the last 2 years, the last time these kids were in school was when they were like in 6th grade or 7th grade, and now they're at the high school, but they still behave like 6th graders
Yep.
because they never learned or never got through all of that socialization or learning progress. And so it was like we've got these giant kids who are still, 5th and 6th graders. And that's kind of what it's like with these 3rd and 4th graders. They're still like kindergartners. They don't know how to, again, cope with a multitude of people, and also how to deal with their own emotions because they didn't have to do that. So here comes patience again. We got to be patient and give it a chance. You can't just go, oh, it didn't work. Forget it. I'm gonna go old school.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. Just because you fell over once as a toddler, you didn't just lay there on the floor. I mean, you got up again and you tried it again, it took me forever to learn how to tie my shoes, but eventually I did it. So you just have to keep at it, and eventually, we'll get through this one, and heaven forbid, but there's going to be another, whatever it is, something. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing and takeaway is that you got to adjust. You got to adjust. You got to be flexible. You got to go with the times. And I think that that's, for me, what has made education for me so still enjoyable after 26 years is that I still try to stay flexible with it. I try to learn what the kids are into. I try to go with the times. I try to remember to, remind myself, hey, this is what they're going through. This is what we've been doing. It's ever changing. It's evolving because you're dealing with people.
Yes.
Again, it's not a product that we're producing. It's people. And so when you're dealing with people, it's a forever changing and evolving thing.
That's tremendous. No, it's that all of that's changing. That's the stuff. That's the professional development, the continued development. You got to be a student of your business, no matter where you are. Mm-hmm. But as a teacher, you've got to constantly, hey, what's new? Let me try this. Let me try that. I feel like when you're completely comfortable as a teacher, that's when you really got to check yourself. Wait a second.
Because you know what, like even myself, when I think of how I was like even 15 years ago, I'm like, you were a jerk. Like, what was that? Why did you do that? And I mean, at that time, again, it might have worked with the kids that I had, or like how old I was, but I was like, oh my God, you have to evolve yourself, and you have to reflect, you have to look back and change. But I think that you're right. If you get too comfortable, you become complicit, and then that's not good for you as a person or for your students, but you are forever growing and changing and learning.
You also got to give yourself credit too. And if you try something new and it doesn't work out, or you just a great anecdote is, shout out to Karen Shiley, one of my favorite mentors. She kept me in teaching. She was my reading specialist when I started teaching, and she coached me on a lot of things. But she told me a story about how she and her colleague were talking, and that her colleague had been teaching for 40 years. And she said, well, I wish I could go back in time, go and call all my students that I had in the first 3 years of teaching and apologize to them for that first 3 years, because a first year teacher, you're going to be like, I remember my first couple of years. It takes you time to develop who you are, to sharpen your skills. But you're going to constantly be in that, okay, this new thing here, I'm going to do this. You're taking and moving things around. But I think what's also interesting that you had mentioned is that it seems like the one constant in all of that is that heart, that trust, building those relationships, no matter how you do, no matter what's going on. That seems to be the most consistent thing that doesn't change. And that's interesting, that's the one thing you can't really be taught in a professional development. That either comes with experience, or you have it, like you said, you've got it from the get-go.
Yeah, and that's just something that needs to also, I think, maybe be taught, or at least brought up in education classes, because again, you can learn knowledge, I guess, your basic knowledge of your field, but it's a field where you have to actually experience in order to learn and to grow. And when I switched schools, when I came up to the high school from middle school. It was my 4th year of teaching by then, and I remember it was a rough year. And one of the older teachers had said to me, "Well, you're like a new teacher again." And I'm like, so here I was like, I'm all cocky, and I'm like, "No, it's my 4th year, so I'm not a new teacher anymore."
Yeah.
I thought I was, tough shit. And I said, he said, "But every time you change jobs or go to a new school, you are new because it's a new environment, new this, whatever." And he said, "Your first year, no matter if you're a first year teacher out of college or going into a new school, your first year is survival."
Yeah.
Absolutely. And your second year is like you're waking up like, okay, I made it. I remember, and now I'm going to make a couple of changes, but not too many because I'm still not comfortable. And then by your third year, that's when you realize what's you and what's not. And then that's where your style starts to come in, is about your third year. And so really your first 3 years are kind of like, and it's finally your 4th and 5th year where you are really bringing in and changing, like you said, and moving things around. It's kind of like, and I love analogies, but it's kind of like, you get your first apartment ever living somewhere. And of course, you've got your apartment and you think, again, your big stuff because you've got your own apartment and you no longer live with mom and dad. But you've got a crate and a futon, and you're like, yeah, I got places people can sit, and then like 8 people come over and you're like, oh, well, I don't have enough dishes. Okay, well, and eventually
dishes,
you right, paper plates. You accumulate things, and then eventually you get all this furniture, and then one day you're like, I love my furniture, but I don't like where it's at. So then you rearrange it.
Yep.
And then after a while, I mean, you get a new couch, you get a new this, you get a new that, you put things together. I don't want this here. I'm going to put it in the bedroom. It's kind of like that. That's what teaching is like. You grow, you develop, you get more stuff. You look at somebody and go, oh, I like that. And then you're like, I'm going to incorporate that into my stuff, So when you go over to Jen always says that I'm nosy, that I like to look in other people's houses. And I'm like, this is because I'm getting ideas. And so that's the same thing with like teaching. You got to talk to other people and see them, because you can pull ideas from them too, and collaborate and come up with your own stuff. But eventually you'll have this awesome house of cool stuff, and it's going to be your style. So just like your students are growing and developing a style all their own, you as a teacher are doing the same thing.
Absolutely. And that's where the trust comes in with your colleagues too. Like instead of, hey, I've got this secret that works in my room and I'm not going to share with anybody. But if you have that team that shares, like I was constantly going in and looking at other people's classrooms, and we're talking about, hey, how do you do this? This works. And the same thing, they'll come into my room and they'll say, oh, I like this. Or, hey, I do this, but I do it differently. Have you tried it this way? I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to do it this way. And constantly refining what you have. And you're absolutely right. When I had taught 3rd grade for so long, and then when I bumped up to 4th grade, there were times where I felt like a first year teacher again, because I had to, not only did I have to rethink, I had to learn the 4th grade curriculum and everything. I also had to remember these are 4th grade students. These were where my 3rd grade kids were at the end of the year. They're coming to me that way. And they're going to end as 5th graders, which I don't know if it's something in the food, but it seems like 5th graders are like middle school kids when I was a kid. I mean, they're, and it's so funny because at the schools I've taught, 5th grade is the highest at elementary, right before middle school. They go to a different middle school, and 5th graders were like, they thought they had senioritis. You know, that April and May, they're walking around like
they're tough and cool.
Hey, I run 5th grade, man. And you just know, and we always laugh because we always wish that they started elementary a week later than the other schools, so that elementary teachers could just go to middle school and watch how their kids realize, oh, I'm not
now you're a little fish.
I'm not the big fish anymore. Oh, wow. I mean, we joke about that, but no, it's great. And it's great to hear from kids. And, and also it's always, I turn gray every time I see some adult, some 6-foot person walking in and going, hey, Mr. Burden, remember me? I'm like, CJ, what? Well, you were this kid.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And you also, in addition to being a fantastic educator, you also had been a coach for several years. And how similar, or are there any differences or similarities as being a coach and versus being a teacher and in your new role as a dean? And do you see, like, has that helped you in building those relationships and motivating the people that you work with?
I think so. And again, same thing with, it was a 13-year span of coaching, various levels, all the way from 5th grade to high school varsity, various sports, basketball, volleyball, softball. And again, it goes back to relationships, and in seeing some of my earlier years of coaching, trying to be like, strict, because I remember the coaches that I had back in 1,000 years ago, and they were very tough and very strict, and this is what you did. Well, times have changed and you got to adapt to that. And I took a course when I was an AD called Inside Out, and this guy, I can't remember his name, I'm so sorry, but he talked about being transformational as opposed to transactional. Like, being a transactional coach, you told your kids what to do and they kind of did it. Whereas transformational, you taught them how to be a person, and you changed their lives. You transformed them from being just an athlete to being a person. And so and I mean, that can be, and it can transfer into teaching as well. But how do you want to be remembered? As someone that just taught them how to play volleyball and to get out there and win, or how to develop their personality and their perseverance on what it means to, how do you lose well? How do you adjust? What do you do when you're not your best? How do you make that change? What is it that you're going to take from this opportunity that you've been given as an athlete and then move forward with it? What are you going to give others? And so as a coach, are you going to give your time to be that transformational person for that teenager or that young person? Because it's more than just the sport that's going on. Again, you're dealing with people. That's what you really have to remember. And so you have to develop the person, not just the athlete.
That's fantastic. I'm asking this not only as Brandi Krolak, the Dean of Students, but also as mom. How important is extracurricular activities, or are extracurricular activities to students and children that are growing? And what are some pitfalls that parents need to be cautious of with extracurricular activities?
I think that they're very important because it gives a student, a child, an opportunity to see what it is that they like, to learn about other people, to be with other people. It can be creative. It teaches them time management, which is so very important. That, I was just talking to a student yesterday. She's like, I do so much better when I'm in season, with her grades. Cause she's like, I'm very, organized, and which is true. And I mean, and life needs organization or whatnot. But as a parent, I think one of the pitfalls though, is that you start your child way too young with the serious stuff. When Savannah, who played on an elite travel volleyball team, she did not start until she was in 5th grade. And I purposely held her back to starting in 5th grade. Whereas when she went into this elite team, some of those kids had been playing since they were in 1st grade. And I'm like, for the intensity, that's too much. Like, to be involved in something when you're little, like for fun, absolutely. Like when she played soccer, they just ran around and kicked the ball. Like it was, and everybody, yay, you did great. Like,
here's your oranges.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's all they cared about was the snack, and what the flavor of the juice was. And that's fantastic. Because again, it teaches them teaches great listening skills and being involved and having fun. But I think that parents are so scared that their students are going to miss out and not be that elite person. And then that causes, it can, not to say that it will, but it can cause so much stress on a student, and then they miss the fun, or they become too stressed out. Or it does also put a lot of strain on these little bodies, and we forget that. and we're just it's so competitive nowadays. And I mean, when Savannah was going through volleyball, the parents would say like, there's no way if you don't do club volleyball, you're never going to make a varsity team. And it's like, what?
What?
Like to me, that's like, because when I played, like nobody was in club. They didn't have clubs.
Yeah.
Like you just played and you just played for that season. Whereas now, and the other thing, and I don't believe in this either, is that athletes just specialize in one, and that's not good for you.
Oh no.
You know, they're saying now that coaches or college coaches are looking for athletes that are multiple sport athletes. For one, it's harder on your body when you're only doing like the repetitive motions of one sport. But it's better when you can change your mindset to those kind of rules or how a game is played and the different personalities. Again, that it is such a benefit to being a multi sport athlete than just specializing. And so many of these parents are like, no, you have to specialize. You have to play softball all year long. And when you're off season, you have to go to these clinics and you have to do this. And these kids are not being kids.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what worries me, is the huge competitiveness. And when you look at the amount of kids that actually go to college to play, and then the amount of 2% of college athletes go on to be professionals, 2%.
Yep.
And I mean, that it's very small and minute. I mean, you know, and you don't have to go to, you know, a Big Ten school to play. You can go to a smaller school and play, but it's just it's the pushing of the parents sometimes that causes students to not like their sport or to kind of go awry. And so that can be kind of scary, but I think it's all balance with anything in life, you know, but I think that kids do need to be involved. But on the other side of that, I feel like there are parents who are like, I'm just going to let them do whatever they want. I don't want to push them too hard. And then the kid does nothing.
Yeah.
And that can be bad too. So, you know, as a parent, you're going to screw up. You're going to screw your kids up. So save money for therapy. But I mean, you do the best that you can. And it's like teaching, it's trial and error. When you're like, oh crap, that didn't work. Or, you know what, we can't do travel soccer and travel softball together. You got to pick one, kiddo.
Yeah.
You know, it's just what's good for the family and for that student. But ask them, because it's their kind of life too. And so it's just trial and error. But I really do think that being involved, and it doesn't have to be sports either. Like there's so many different activities for kids to get involved with,
robotics,
even at a young, science stuff, theater, music. I mean, there's so many different activities now for students that they can get involved with, that, I mean, you can find something for everybody nowadays, you know? And as long as they're involved in something, I think that's super important.
Wanted to ask you, and as we kind of get close to wrapping up, this has been fantastic.
Thanks.
If you could wave a magic wand and change education, not necessarily specifically where you are, but in general, what's something that you would like to see changed, improved, or change differently than the current state of education? And it might be difficult to answer because you kind of sound like you are in such a great spot. But are there any? Yeah, there is
something that came to mind instantly, because I'm thinking of education overall. Because one of the things that bothers me the most is the lack of respect for that profession. Because we go to school, we go to a university for 4 years, just like so many other professions. We have a degree. Many of us have masters and even PhDs in our field, and the respect is not there. And I would prefer that respect over money any day, because people don't think of teachers. A lot of times they think of us as babysitters now.
Yeah.
You know, like a doctor, you go to a doctor or a lawyer's office, or even a CPA, you go to their office, you respect them for what they do. You listen to their advice. You entrust them with either your body, your money, whatever. But we're not getting that same trust and respect from people in our profession. They don't see it the same way. And I just wish that the respect and acknowledgement for what a teacher does was just a little bit better than what it is in society. And again, like when people tell you, oh, you're a teacher, oh, It's that pit. Oh, you are. I'm so sorry. Like, what the hell? Like,
What?
I'm not
Yeah.
sorry. I chose it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're poor and disrespected. I'm sorry. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, why is that? And I don't, and that's what turns off a lot of kids too. Not only is it a lot of money, but I don't want to be disrespected, but
Yeah.
I just wish we were as taken as seriously as other professions.
Or you get you must be nice to get summers off. Yeah.
Okay. Like I have a friend who works, she started in the mill a year before I started teaching, and she gets more vacation time than I do. So, and when she's on vacation, she does nothing.
Yeah.
When in the summers when I was always working. Okay, yeah, I may be sitting on my patio in the sun drinking a lemonade,
Yeah.
but I'm working for 5-6 hours on curriculum stuff, on this, on that. I mean, you're still working, you're still reading, you're still doing.
Right.
We work all the time, just like everybody else. We earn the money that we have. So yeah, it is nice to be off in the summers.
Not
But
really.
other professions, they get off too. They have vacation.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
And
it's the same thing.
my summers a lot of times are spent professional development.
Yeah.
Or, I have to take this class, I have to take this, I got to get this ready, I got to relearn this. As well as, you think about it it's what you're talking maybe 2 months and versus the amount of extra time that you are putting in, even though you're trying to keep that work-life balance,
It's nonstop.
In 8 hours a day, you're not only a teacher, but you're the psychologist, you're the game show host, you're having to keep everybody dialed in and instead of that. And it's funny too, because like I've always felt like I'd rather feel more appreciated than paid more. Like my pay, we were doing fine as a teacher, but instead of fighting for higher wages, I'd rather just feel respected more or appreciated. And that I think that's a lot of teachers feel that way. And it's interesting too, because when you talk to other countries, Australia, I've talked to an Australian teacher and folks that in other countries, teachers are regarded that way. They're held like, you're a teacher. Whoa, that's awesome. Hey, here you go. Their respect is much different. Why do you think it's the opposite in the United States? Why do you think teachers are not as respected as they should?
Well, for one, I gotta say, because I've heard in other countries, like, and I don't know exactly where, but in some countries, teachers don't have to pay taxes because they're revered at so highly. I know in some countries that when a teacher walks into a room, the students stand and they do not sit until their teacher acknowledges them. And it's again,
Kind of
it's
like
out
a
of
judge,
that.
like all rise. Yeah.
Yes, it's again that respect. I think that this again, it's beautiful country that we live in, and I wouldn't have it any other way, and our freedoms. But I think it's the glamorization of so many other things that we just fall down too far. We don't value education, I think, as a whole country. We value stardom. We value fame. We value being cool or being a movie star or a musician or that, whatever it may be. We value
TikTok influencer.
Yeah, we value those things more because as a free country and we're able to do that. But it's like, who cares? I can make so much more money doing this as opposed to learning something. But it's like, okay, you couldn't be an influencer if somebody hadn't invented, I don't know, the phone or the camera or this or that, like that kind of stuff is important. And I don't think we value that enough. Or put the cool spin on it. Like with STEM or STEAM, they're trying to make it cooler to attract more people. They're trying to make it, look at all the girls that are in this program to make it more appealing for girls. It's like girls have always been a part of this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like we have to make it appealing because we're up against these shinier, cooler things, like who wants to ride a skateboard when you can ride an electronic, scooter that you don't even have to use your foot for. It's like,
right.
If you could press a button and go 40, why would I spend all of my time and effort on a skateboard?
Exactly.
And that's kind of how I feel with some of these things. It's like kids want to do the shinier, cooler instant rather than learning and giving education that kind of respect. And I think it's just a societal downfall of where we live.
Well, Brandi, this has been more than awesome. Thank you so much. Any final words of wisdom or advice to educators out there watching?
If it's in your heart, don't give it up. I mean, it's your calling, it's your love. I always think of it, if we're talking about family, you never give up on a family member that you love. So why would you do that to your profession?
Awesome. And on that note, this has been the Educators Podcast. For Brandi Krolak, I am Mr. Burden. Have a wonderful week. Don't give up on your family, and have a great time.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Catch full episodes of the Educators Podcast every Thursday at 4 p.m. Real educators with the real issues in education. Thank you so much for watching. And, of course, take care of yourself. Jeans passes for anyone who likes, shares, and comments on this video. Have a great week.